Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing really great today. I'm super excited about today's video because today we get to make an art journal. I really wanted to make an art journal because I have some travel coming up in the next few months and I wanted to be able to capture some of the things I experience on those travels. But aside from that, I think art journals are great for making creativity a daily practice. They're also a wonderful playground for experimenting with different mediums or just different subject matters you want to learn how to make. So, let's make an art journal. This journal is an example of one that I've made before, and the one we're making today is going to look a lot like this one. So we'll go ahead and we'll make a cover for our journal, and then we'll go in and make these little sections that are called signatures. And once we make those, we'll go ahead and sew them into the cover, and we'll have a journal. Now, this sounds really simple. It's a little more complicated than that, but I promise it's something you can absolutely do. All right, let's get started. So I'm gonna go over the materials that we're gonna need for this project. And if you forget, just look at the description and I'll have the materials list there also. So for your cover, you're gonna want to have a cereal box or a snack box that's cardboard. And clearly I chose Fiddle Faddle, it's one of my favorite snacks. And then you're gonna wanna have some paper. I chose mixed media because I want to do wet media and dry media, but choose whichever paper suits you best for the type of work that you want to put in your art journal. And you'll also want to ensure that it's still big enough of an area to work on when you fold a piece of the paper in half. And for this project, I'd highly recommend purchasing a bookbinding kit if you don't already have one. I got this one on Amazon, I think, for under $10, so it is pretty inexpensive and a great investment if you plan on making your own journals pretty often. And for this project, we'll be using the paper creaser. It looks like this, and it gives you nice crisp creases. Not quite sure what that thing is. And you should also get an awl for poking holes in the spine of your cover as well as the spines of the signatures. You also get these large book binding needles. And then, of course, you'll get some wax covered book binding thread, and it's covered in wax to help reduce the friction when you're pulling the thread through the paper. So all those things are very useful and really make bookbinding a lot easier. And to ensure that the signatures you create are evenly spaced when you are binding them to the cover of your journal, you're going to want to make yourself like a little sewing guide. And for that, I use graph paper. And to make the guide, you'll just cut a piece of graph paper that is the same width and height as the spine of your journal. Using your awl, you'll want to make 3 sets of holes, leaving about a ½ inch on the top and the bottom, and then equal distance between the center row and the top and bottom rows. You'll also want to ensure that the holes in each row are evenly spaced and that you have enough for the number of signatures you plan to bind into your book. Today, I'm doing 5. Okay, so the materials I've mentioned so far are the bare bones materials to actually make the journal. But now let's get into the fun part, which is the decorative part. So typically for my art journals, I like to use outdated calendars to wrap the outside. And I choose these because number one, the thickness of the paper is usually perfect. It's thin enough to fold over the cover, but thick enough to still reinforce the cardboard cover. And also the artwork is just beautiful, and you can find them really cheap online because they're outdated calendars and people probably don't want them for anything other than crafts at that point. You could also probably use thicker wrapping paper or sheet music. Those are great options. I just like it to be big enough to cover the entire outside of the cover. I also like to have tissue paper on hand to line the inside of the cover. And then for the signatures, I'm going to put my mixed media paper in the signatures, but I like to have a decorative cover on the outside of them. You might have noticed that in the example journal that I showed you, they had all kinds of different paper, but there was a decorative cover for each section. So I'm going to use sheet music for those covers today. And finally, you're probably going to be wanting to do all of this journal making on some kind of cutting mat because there are a lot of sharp objects involved in today's project. Also, a lot of glue. Make sure you have a glue stick, your scissors, and X-Acto knives. Ta-da! I think with that, we should be all set to start our journal making. Okay, to begin the journal, we're gonna grab our cardboard box and then just open up the seams all around the box so that you can lay it out flat. And from there, we're going to cut off all of those little flaps. All right, so once the box is flap free, we're going to continue to cut down the cover to fit the size of our paper. To do this, I'm going to fold a piece of my paper in half. This is actually creating a folio. That's just a folded piece of paper. And then this will be the ultimate size of my signature. So what I usually do is I leave about a half an inch of space around the outside of the open edges. So I'm going to cut for the height right now, and I'll leave about a half inch on what will be the top and a half inch on what will be the bottom. And then I'll just cut straight across to remove the excess. And I'm going to do the same thing when I'm cutting for the width of the journal. So I'm going to take that folio that I made, align it with that center panel of the journal cover, and then go about a half inch out. So I'll mark it off, either measure it or eyeball it, and then just cut off the excess. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So again, realigning that folio with the center panel, eyeballing or measuring about a half inch out, and then removing the excess. So the end result should be something that's about perfect size for your folio. And it looks like, I don't know, I could take off a little more height here. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, you can be a lot more precise and measure. I don't know. I just wanted a relaxed sort of journal crafting day. So I'm just eyeballing it and trimming until I like the result. And I do like the results. So we're going to move on to lining the inside of our journal cover. And for this, we're going to use some tissue paper. And to cut it to the right size, I leave about a half inch of extra tissue paper around the outside of the cardboard. And again, you can measure that or you can eyeball it, whatever floats your boat. And once your tissue paper is cut, go ahead and flip it over so the faded side is facing you, and then take your cardboard cover and on the raw side, apply a bunch of glue from your glue stick and make sure it's just evenly applied. And then once you're set, flip that over and center it on the tissue paper and lightly press it down. Then take your paper creaser and drag it down and across the entire cover to smooth out any wrinkles and secure the adhesive. Then flip it over and we're going to cut little triangles at each corner of the spine and then each outside corner. By doing this, we're going to be making little flaps that we can fold over, and then we won't have any ripping or tearing when we do open or close the cover. And to secure each one of these flaps we've created, I'm going to put a little glue right underneath the flap and then flip over the flap and smooth over it with my paper creaser. And there we are. Let's open and shut it. Great, no rips or tears. Now we can move on to the outside wrap. And I'm just going to flip through my calendars here and choose one that I like and that will cover the entire back side of the journal cover. I think I found one. I really like the floral print on this. I think it's so pretty. And again, to cut your paper to the right size to fit your cardboard cover, you're going to want to leave about a half inch of excess paper around the cardboard. So don't really worry about what I'm doing here. I'm trying to be precise and it's not working very well. So so if you want to measure, go for it. Otherwise, just eyeball it. Just keep in mind that you want enough excess paper to be able to make a flap to fold over the cardboard, because we're going to do flaps like we did with the tissue paper. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, measure or eyeball it. Once you have the paper cut to size, go ahead and flip it over so the blank side is facing you. And then you're going to take the cardboard cover and flip it so that the tissue paper side is down. Then you're going to take your glue stick and put an even application of glue on the exposed side. Once that's all evenly coated with glue, you're going to flip that over and lightly press down. And of course, ensure that the cover is centered on the paper. And again, we're going to make some flaps by cutting triangles at each point of the spine and then the outer points of the cover. Once the flaps have been created, we're going to flip over the cover and then smooth everything out with that paper creaser. Before I glue the flaps down, I always like to fold them over and crease them with my paper creaser to make sure everything looks nice and crisp, and they're easier to glue down this way. Also, if there is any excess paper, I'll go ahead and trim that as well. And you'll notice I'm doing the top and bottom flaps first. There is a reason for this, we'll get to it. But yeah, I want to make sure those are nice and crisp, and then I'm just putting glue right under the flaps and running my paper creaser over them to secure the adhesive. So for the side flaps, I am going to do the same thing, crease them with the paper creaser and trim any excess. But notice how I'm trimming them at like a 45-degree angle because I want them to kind of dart inward. It creates a more crisp corner, and I like the way it looks. So that's something a little different than what we do for the other flaps. But yeah, then just glue them down and go over them with the paper creaser, and you should be good to go. All right, the cover is almost complete. We just need to create panels for the inside, front, and back. This helps protect those flaps we just glued down. We'll just put a panel of paper that covers the front and the back on the inside, like I said, and it'll prevent that glue from coming up. And so yeah, you just kind of cut them to size. You certainly don't have to use book pages either. You can use whatever it is you've been using. If you have more old calendar pieces or more sheet music or wrapping paper or whatever, you just want to cut a panel big enough to cover those flaps and protect them. And again, you can be precise. I'm eyeballing it. I'm even leaving these kind of ragged edges. I think they're pretty cute. And I don't know, I want it to have a whimsical handcrafted, look, so I think that will add to it. And just make sure that if you are using anything with text, that you double check and make sure that you are not gluing them in upside down. Full disclosure, I did have to redo this part because I totally glued my panels in upside down, so just fair warning. Once the panels are secure, just make sure you smooth everything out with that paper creaser. Trim any excess bits that you might find that might get in the way of the book opening or closing. Reapply glue as needed, smooth it down. We just want everything to be nice and tight and secure. And then there you have it. You've got your journal cover. All right, next we're going to get started on our signatures. Now, signatures are basically just sheets of paper folded in half and nested together. So for my signatures today, I'm using 4 sheets of mixed media paper. I'm folding each sheet in half and nesting them together. And then for the 5th sheet on the outside of each signature, I'm going to cut a piece of sheet music to size and fold that over the outside. And altogether, I'm going to do 5 signatures. I'm going to do the first couple so you can watch and get an idea of what I'm doing. But I won't make you watch all 5. It's pretty repetitive. And you certainly don't have to do just one kind of paper for your signatures, depending on what you want to do with your journal. I mean, you can do watercolor paper and mixed media paper. You can do sketching paper. You can put graph paper in there. You could make your own paper. I've done that before. So you can really have a lot of fun with it. I wanted something more straightforward today, but yeah, like I've definitely put like 5 different types of paper in each signature, and it's kind of fun because it can prompt you to create something that you might not have if there was only one type of paper. So that's just something to think about. But for today, we're keeping it pretty straightforward. Okay, the cover is done, the signatures are done. Now it's time to sew the signatures into the cover. To do this, I'm going to place my guide directly on the spine of my journal and then use my awl to puncture holes into the spine. And you'll notice that I only have 5 signatures, but I have 9 holes across my guide. So I'm just starting with the outside hole, just puncturing using every other hole in my guide. So I end up with 5 across. And to make the binding process a little bit easier, I do like to go back through those holes I made with my binding needle. I just find it makes um, the thread go through a little more easily. And to thread the needle, I don't tie off anything or cut anything. I just make sure there's a long tail so I can hang on to everything. And then, yeah, and I don't pre-cut it. I just keep it attached to the spool until it's time to tie off the signature. Now for this first signature, I'm puncturing holes as I go. So you start from the inside center hole of the signature and push it through that first center hole in the spine. And then you take that down the back and poke the needle through the bottom first hole of the spine and take it through the bottom hole of that signature. And right here, I'm trying to just poke a hole through the top hole of that signature. So once you get that hole in place, you're going to thread the needle through that top hole of the signature and then the top hole of the spine, and then take it back through the center spine and the center hole of the signature. Clip it and tie it off. So it's nice and tight. And we'll do that again because it's kind of tricky the first time you do it. And here I'm deciding that I want to actually pre-puncture the holes because I think it'll be easier for me to do and also to explain. So for this next one, I'm pre-puncturing the holes and then we'll do some thread work in a minute. Okay, so we're going to take the thread, put it through that center hole of the signature and take it through the second center hole of the spine. And then on the back side, we go down through the bottom second hole and take it through the bottom hole of the signature. And then we go up all the way to the top hole of the signature, take it through the top second hole of the spine, and then we go back through the center second hole of the spine and through the center hole of the signature and clip it and tie it off. And you're going to keep doing that until all of your signatures are in place. And I'll be the first to admit that when I first started making my own journals, like this binding part was really intimidating to me. But once you do a couple of signatures, you get the hang of it, and it's pretty simple. It looks a lot more complicated when you're watching it and hearing someone explain it, but when you're actually doing it, it's it kind of becomes second nature. You can do it in your sleep after a while. So don't let this intimidate you or scare you off. I'm glad that I gave it a try because I think these journals are so fun to create. They're almost little works of art in and of themselves, and then you can fill them with more beautiful artwork and anything your heart desires. So yeah, I definitely recommend giving it a try. And if you did make it this far, thanks so much for creating with me today. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button and let me know if you decide that you're going to make a journal. I always love to hear your feedback and the things that you're up to. So go ahead and leave a comment. Thanks again for joining me today. Until next time, take care.